Since none of our members are attending remotely, I don't need to call the roll at this point. We don't have any observers who are attending on Zoom, at least not yet. So,
Just two, so it's Trevor, sorry.
Right, so-
and-
Trevor and Patrick.
Thanks.
Patrick emailed me to say, I don't remember if he copied everybody in the email, but he has another conflict, so he isn't able to be with us. Haven't heard from Trevor one way or the other,
Okay.
so,
Or just point up the agenda. Right.
Yeah, that's.
That doesn't have any attachments.
so on the agenda,
Okay,
the first item on the agenda is committee reorganization. In theory, after, on the 1st of July or later, our first meeting after the 1st of July, we're supposed to officially organize or reorganize. We are, me as chair and Marie as vice chair and Shannon as clerk. If we're all happy with that arrangement and want to continue that, then a motion to that effect would be in order. If someone else would like to be chair. Yeah, I don't feel that I'm the only one who can be chair here, but someone else would be interested in chairing the committee for the coming year or what's left of the year, that's fine with me too.
Anyone?
I'm happy.
Yeah. Okay, so I move that we continue with Dave as chair, Anne Marie as vice chair, and Shannon as clerk for the upcoming year.
I'll second that.
It's been seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, carried, motion carried unanimously, and now I can fill out the clerk, the form the town clerk sent me back in July.
Tell her
This
we're
is
sorry.
this was our first opportunity since the 1st of July. We had a meeting in August, but there were too few of us here and we have another major agenda item that we wanted to focus on. So, having said that, our next agenda item is the Trails Committee charge update.
By the way, do we-
And,
Well, I don't know, how do you get on the Wi-Fi? Do you know the password or anything?
Grafton Guest Wireless,
Yes.
and the password is, I want to say it's Grafton 2013, but let me double check on that. I've looked in the right place.
Right? Didn't work. Oh, maybe it's working, Dave.
I'll see. I didn't keep going, it's fine. I'll see the.
Yes, Grafton 2013 with a capital G.
No, I'm good.
So you are. All right,
So, Trails Committee. Seems that the charge that the select board approved a few months ago has gotten some pushback.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. Dave, you was at the meeting as well, but we got an email like on Friday, so Tuesday was when the people who were interested were due to be approved by us or whatever, or interviewed or what have you. And so the Friday, I believe it was, or Thursday evening, we got an email saying that conservation had some issues with some of the items. And that if we were to pursue these items, it was taking work from them and that might cause problems or what have you. So then on the Tuesday meeting, there was no further correspondence. On the Tuesday meeting, basically it was passed over that particular night. I believe the people who expressed interest were told that. And then our next meeting, we had a discussion. And so there are 3 or 4 of the items that we took off of them, the open space and rec master plan that presented it or whatever, posed a problem for the Conservation Commission. So there was a discussion and basically, 1 or so of the board members just felt that this committee, the Trails Committee, could be enveloped into this open space and rec committee and that it wouldn't be a standalone. Partly because 3 or 4 of these items were deemed by conservation as being something that they do already. And then as some of the members went through the other items, they also felt that those could be absorbed by other committees. And so there's some discussion that ensued, and I don't know if anyone watched that particular meeting, but at the end, I just kind of said, I'll bring it back to the open space and rec. We'll revisit the trails, the charge, and, you know, go from there. In hindsight, maybe I should just ask for a vote then and there, but I didn't. I just figured, okay, we can look at it, we can maybe tweak it. I mean, this wasn't our first run. We had a run. And the select board pushed back for more details, and then this seemed to make sense is to put the actual items from from this document. So yeah. So I know that part of your correspondence to us, there was the letter from one of the select board members expressing, you know, some of their concerns. But I think that it should be a standalone committee still. And I think that we did a lot of work on this for, you know, we looked at this charge over and over and tweaked it. Select board approved it. And, you know, I just think that it's still worth pursuing. And additionally, there's support in the community for this. It quickly garnered, what are we looking for, 5 people? And we get 6 people that applied for it. I was at a master plan meeting, one of the workshops that they had, the first one. And a number of folks were speaking to, you know, the Trails Committee and excited about something like this happening. So,
what were the crossover items?
yeah, do you have that
Yeah.
offhand? Okay.
I have Andy's email
It was from
and the
Andy.
list of the Office of Select Board. This was the Select Board charge item. These items that are circled in one, have a circle next to them, one, those are the items that.
Okay. Yeah, I
An-
have the email,
Andy.
I mean, I have the Trails Committee charter pulled up, but I couldn't tell which one.
Those are the ones,
Okay, the ones that had the one
not
line.
the one.
Yeah, so it's my impression that the pushback at least in part is and as Anne Marie said, there's at least an impression that the intent of the Trails Committee was to duplicate some of the work that in particular conservation is doing. And just sort of taking a step back and thinking about how this all came about. The action items that the Open Space and Rec Plan developed for a Trails Committee, the idea, the perceived need for a Trails Committee as such was, you know, comes from the fact that the land trust manages a bunch of trails on their land and conservation manages a bunch of trails on their land. And there was a perception at the time the Open Space and Rec Plan was written that there was a lack of coordination between those two organizations. So there was the perception was that, you know, we needed some way for, you know, the two parts of Trails and Grafton to coordinate their efforts, you know, and work together more closely than perhaps they have been. Now, I don't know personally the extent to which that perception is accurate.
Okay, I was gonna ask you that.
And in fact, one of my thoughts going into this revisiting the Trails Committee was to circle back, you know, either with the land trust and conservation together or with each one of them individually and get a better sense of, is there something missing regarding trails? Is there something missing between these two organizations? Because to the extent that that they are comfortable with where they're at and they don't see a problem with coordination, maybe there's not a problem to be solved there by a new Trails Committee.
Well, this isn't just all about coordination, right? There are other things that the Committee can be looking
Right,
at.
and so like I said,
Yeah.
that was part of,
Yeah.
at least it's part of the
These
idea
these
behind
activities still.
the Trails Committee.
Yeah, all of those are still relevant.
There's presumably there's little, if any, question that these action items, that these are things that should be done. The question is, who's responsible for them? Is there a single organization that should be in any sense responsible for every one of these? Is there some of them, are there some of them that are covered sufficiently well by the land trust and Concom each acting on their own with respect to their own trails. So maybe to that extent, there's no new role needed for the others. Maybe there still is.
But we have 5 people who are already interested.
Yes.
Six, actually,
6 people who are interested, and we have a body of work that still needs to be completed.
right,
And so for me, if there is interest and there's people who are willing to do it, and then because it could be additive, we can continue to add more, and I'm sure the Trails Committee would be adding more
Mhm.
to what they want to accomplish. I don't know that it should be folded into another group.
Right, that's kind of the key question is to.
I vote no.
Because I don't think any of us have been thinking that we want to duplicate the effort that land trust and conservation are already doing.
no,
We're
and
not-
no committee.
We want, we don't,
No
we're not
committee
interested in
members don't
taking anything away from them.
Correct.
We want to make sure there's organization between them. There is a central place that somebody can go and say, what are all the fields, what are all the trails in Grafton that we can walk?
Mhm.
It just
And-
makes common sense. To me,
Early-
that's common sense.
Early on in this committee work too, and I don't have the dates, and I brought this up just minimally at that meeting. I remember that conservation, we reached out to them on a number of the action items. And
Absolutely.
that we were told that it was too much, that they weren't able
Yes.
to take any of it
Yeah.
on. So I didn't look through the minutes to find that out, but there's that. And then I will say, just for the record, that there's a conservation member on this committee. And I can't remember, I can't come up with how many times that person has been in attendance in the 2 years that we've been meeting.
Yeah, very few.
Right, less than a handful.
I'm not gonna worry about trying to count it exactly.
No, for sure, but
It's
my
sufficient to
point
say
being,
that the conservation's participation in this committee has been minimal.
right, and minutes are available, so if you're on a committee, you can attend, certainly minutes are available, it's, via Zoom. So this information has been out there, right? We've been working on this for a while. There's a reason that we had somebody from recreation, somebody from land trust, somebody from conservation on this committee, so that we could come up with a document that everybody felt good about.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so to the extent that we still see the standalone trails committees being something useful and valuable, the question becomes, how do we rewrite
yeah, so let's
The-
do that.
the idea of what this committee should be doing in such a way as to make it very clear that it's not taking anything away from the existing trails activities, that it's intended to work, to be complementary to what's already being done by the land trust and the conservation.
What were you gonna say, Shannon?
Well, I was gonna say, touching upon what you mentioned earlier about it's not just about coordination, because the feel that I got for what the Trails Committee was supposed to be doing is like being enthusiastic and kind of getting the word out to people and promoting trails. And like, that's not being, I mean, Land Trust does a good job of that, but the idea was to like be doing a lot more of that. And no one's doing that right now. So we would need extra people who are enthusiastic and
Yeah, so our mission at this point is to find a way to say what we think the Trails Committee needs to be, what we think a Trails Committee is going to be doing. Find a way to say that, to make it, I think we probably have a reasonably clear understanding amongst ourselves. But how do we communicate that in a way that the conservation and land trust and, other people, even the administration of the town?
Yeah, so
Evan was also somewhat skeptical about this, as I recall. Basically.
Select board voted on it. And it was a 5-0. that we
But
accepted
even
the charge.
Angie Jefferson voted correctly, so now
Yeah.
for him to follow up.
Yeah, so
I
now
just,
it's
how
sort of,
would it do though? Just to, like,
Right, yeah. it doesn't-
Well, there was another committee I proposed that was the same thing. What harm could this possibly do?
right,
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
here we
we
are.
only do good things, so let's just do it.
Yeah, so I have here, I think I would like to propose that we try to get this charge done tonight, because we've talked
Yeah.
about it enough. And I'd rather not put it off, and this is, personal for me, and get this back on the agenda. And we have 6 people out there that were enthusiastic and willing to
So you
serve
don't
on the
wanna lose
committee.
them.
And I think, you look at charges, if you look on our website, and look at some of the committees and look to see what their charges. little to nothing. I can, name out a few, so. We were asked to make it more substantive, which we
Mhm.
did, and I think maybe backing out a little bit and maybe just making it a little bit more global. Because the committee, as they evolve, it's a brand new committee, can sort out, here's where we might be able to help. Not hinder anybody, not take anyone's job away, not duplicate anything, of course. But here's what this might look like. So I think if maybe the charge being so specific. In the end, didn't work out, right?
Yeah.
So I have here, though, I don't know where this came from. It's Trail Coordination and Management Committee. Do you guys remember us ever talking about this? It just had this,
Who's it from?
I don't know. But it seems there's some verbiage in there that's a little bit, more global. But even if we just,
It's the Shrewsbury one?
Oh, is it,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
the Shrewsbury one.
is it? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's, Shrewsbury Trails Committee was and I think,
I looked that one up today, but I wasn't sure that it was this, but, again, like they
Yeah.
did more the purpose. To be advisory to the select board, we don't have to say select board per se, but to coordinate trail planning, management and maintenance. To coordinate planning of trail networks, to provide a sounding board for residents and others with respect to trails. And to function as a liaison between, different entities.
Yeah, I think the name of Trails Coordination Committee,
Mhm,
I think with the one that, what you read was Trails Coordination and Management
Right.
Committee.
right.
And I suspect the word management would.
No, we won't do that. We got trails,
That's
perfect.
right, the actual trails management, we've got a land trust, and we've got a
Totally.
conservation that do the. take
No,
care of it. But
I don't mean that we want this verbiage. I'm just saying that generally, it seems to be just a little bit more global,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I like the sound of what you read, so I mean, particularly, just starting out,
I know, I don't have ours.
if we call it a Trails Coordination Committee, the title kind of hints at what.
Says what
it's
we're doing,
doing, what it's aiming at.
How do we address the perception of lack of coordination or lack of coordination, I'll say, the land trust and conservation?
I'm thinking that that doesn't even have to be said. So if I'm on a brand new trails committee, probably our first action is going to be reaching out to land trust, reaching out to conservation, right? And getting a sense of what are you guys doing? How can we help?
How do you coordinate?
Yeah,
How do you make sure you're not stepping on each other's toes?
yeah,
So I think, there's just as we've been talking about, that kind of, it strikes me that it's the coordination in particular.
Right.
That the perceived need for more coordination is what led to this being included in the open space and rec plan to begin with.
Right, right.
And
Okay.
so if we just follow up on that concept.
Yep.
And I think, I think we probably interrupted you, Anne Marie, as you were reading through some of that. So maybe let's kind of go back and listen to it with that in mind, that we're really thinking of a coordination role here.
That
in
was
this
our-
committee.
That was original intent I was talking about. We need to coordinate all this, make sure it's coordinated.
Yeah, make sure it's coordinated.
And to Shannon's point, just that you have now a team of folks who are focused on a fairly narrow, looking at trails in our town,
Mhm.
getting out there, really looking at them. As opposed to conservation is doing a bazillion other things, land trust is also doing, so.
Yeah, and as you said, Anne Marie, I remember that, the master plan meeting where there is, and not just there, but in a lot of ways, I think we're well aware
Here's
that
our trail.
there's a lot of interest in trails.
So let's,
People
okay,
like to get
so
out in nature.
the first bit, do you think calling it trail coordination committee as opposed to trails committee? I mean, I don't know, it doesn't really change it for me, but whatever.
I almost would think leaving it the same.
Yeah.
Just because then if you change like that one thing,
Yeah,
then that's like another thing we can pounce
Sure.
on.
yeah, so let's just go with trails committee.
Just generic,
Just
maybe.
is what it is. The membership is the same, right? So our mission, we wrote, the mission of the Trails Committee is to serve as the lead agency. Maybe lead agency might not be what we want to put there.
Coordinating agency.
Yeah, so.
But even that coordination implies that there's no coordination currently, and we don't know. if
So
there
here
is.
they have, to function as a liaison between. So maybe like
Ah.
the mission of the Trails Committee is to function as a liaison working in partnership with, and then keep going with this, what we have already, conservation, GLT, planning, recreation.
Yeah.
And then omit for the following action items, because I think we'll just have to delete those action items. Even though it made sense, like we were tying it back to this document, but
That's a good plan. It makes it very simple. How do you complain about that?
and then, you know, so that would maybe be the first paragraph.
Ah.
So the mission of the Trails Committee is to
Liaison. I
act as
like
a
that word.
liaison.
Yeah.
Working in partnership with, and then we can keep going with the
Mhm.
rest of what this is here.
Yeah.
We'll strike out the whole next part. I'm just gonna read the last paragraph, we've done this before, but. So I think the first little bit of
Ah.
that, additionally, the committee shall explore ideas for interconnecting Grafton's open spaces by working with land trust and town boards and departments on new trail development, maybe just put a period there. And we can get rid of the negotiating trail usage, because I know that that came up in our meetings,
Yeah.
as is that really something that we're gonna do? And I know that it was something
Yeah,
that.
and I think
some
when
of the
we,
board
when we
people-
wrote this, we weren't thinking so much as, if I remember right, that the Trails Committee would be negotiating.
Correct,
But the Trails Committee would
would
be,
be part of.
it could be
Yeah.
part of negotiations.
Who's responsible for negotiating? Whose charter is that under?
Well, I suppose it would depend, eh? So if it turns out it's a piece of property, there's a little piece, land trust decides they wanna purchase it.
Okay, all right.
Maybe we're helping them, or maybe they don't need help, you know, but
Yeah, I mean,
that
you-
was,
right, they had those, negotiations for acquisition of land would be the land trust or
so we could just strike
the
that.
town, yeah.
Mhm.
And knowing that
Yeah.
perhaps the Trails Committee would be involved in it somehow,
Mhm.
but maybe, that was
Yeah,
something I
right.
think that folks also.
Right, yeah, I saw, I don't know, some people picked up on that and said, you know, and yes, negotiations, we did not imagine when we wrote this.
Right,
That the Trails Committee would be doing the negotiation.
correct. Like, we're not gonna, the Trails Committee isn't gonna be going out there knocking on the homeowner's
No.
door, yeah.
So
So-
best, yeah, right, I agree, best to leave that language out of the proposed.
So we could just do that last paragraph. So you're writing this down. Are you going too fast?
Nope, I got it.
Do you have the?
I don't have it, but
It would be easier.
I took good notes.
So additionally, the committee shall explore ideas for interconnecting Grafton's open spaces by working with GLT and town boards and departments on new trail development, period. We'll get rid of that next little bit. And negotiating trail usage and access with these other operations, blah, 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 blah. When trail additions or changes are proposed, the committee shall assist as necessary. I mean, I guess what we could say there is maybe just when trail additions or changes are proposed.
I would just take it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
ditch it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we
I
don't
think
need to
less
say
is
it, don't.
more.
Two sentences.
And
that's
whenever
it.
we can just take it out and then it's subject to.
Can we say something about promoting or like,
Yeah. So in this one,
And which one are you looking at? Cause I haven't.
well, so this is ours, what we proposed, so I just broke that out.
Yeah,
And we basically ditched, you know, a good chunk of it.
Right.
But now this is, I just happen to have like this one, just, I think they. Their fifth little thing here just says encourage public involvement, engagement in the planning, management, use of the trails. Hold at least one public forum annually to solicit input ideas. Actually, that's not a bad idea. That could be up to that. And they also have coordinate, manage and adopt a trail program, but that would be something that maybe they could take on. So maybe, the Trails Committee will encourage public involvement and engagement in the planning, management, use of the trails. And
is that only once a
the
year?
trails. No, this would be like all the time, like. Maybe. Again,
encourage public involvement and engagement in use of the trails?
and engagement in the planning, management, and use of the trails.
I don't know how they would do that,
Yeah,
but
that's
I mean,
okay.
I guess.
It's would,
So,
you'd coordinate with land trust
Mm.
or engage land trust, you'd engage conservation, you'd engage recreation,
But it says
get
public,
people out.
the it's.
No,
yeah.
Okay.
So how about if we just said,
engage the public.
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Trails Committee will
Yeah.
engage the public and provide. Information on trails or,
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that was brought up in that letter is that, now we're looking at land use, which we've also been talking about for quite some
Yeah.
time. And so, that's exciting as a separate, but I see that as a separate entity. Of course, it will tie into trails potentially, right? If we are looking at the properties out there, under our kind of the other thing that we're working on. But I don't know that that's a reason to put the brakes on a trails committee,
Mhm.
Right, I
in my
mean,
opinion.
the idea of the Trails Committee that we've had was not. I don't know, lost my train of thought. I think the idea was not that the Trails Committee would go off and prioritize
Right,
land acquisitions for trails,
right,
independent of everything else.
yep,
Certainly in the prioritization project that we're undertaking
yep, it will help the
will
trails committee.
include consideration of trails.
Yeah, and that could be
And-
ultimately information that they could utilize, like,
Yeah.
it would be handy for them, right?
Mhm.
Once that's done, but it's gonna be a separate project that I think that it's worth pursuing the trails.
So, yeah, if the Trails Committee would not list as one of its primary responsibilities the prioritization of land acquisition of trails. It's involved in that. And particularly as a liaison between the land trust and conservation and their trail activities and any. This trails committee could be kind of a focal point for bringing together ideas.
What we'd like to see happen, and then coordinate.
But that in
Those
turn
organizations.
feeds into the broader prioritization project,
Right.
land acquisition.
Mhm.
Do you want me to type
Yeah,
up those
what do we have?
changes
Yeah.
and send around,
Mhm.
and then, you can bring it to the.
Do we have to
Yeah.
wait to meet again to look at that, or can we? Email?
Yeah, if we had a sufficiently clear idea. Before we're finished with the meeting tonight, if we believe we have a sufficiently clear idea and just, we may need to
Yeah.
just sort of confirm with everybody that this.
For sure.
First.
And what Shannon writes down is
Last paragraph.
consistent with our perceptions.
Yep.
That probably doesn't require another meeting.
Okay, that's
But if
great.
there is, if there is,
Yeah.
if there's more work to do on it,
Mhm.
as we write up what we've just talked about. If we then,
Do you want me to just read it?
Yeah,
Wait,
and PS, sorry, which were the things here that were not included as an issue?
It was
Little,
the.
Yeah,
um,
there's,
we had-
5A, 52A, 51B, and 52D, 62D.
okay,
Or not.
Although that doesn't make, because prioritize land acquisition, purchase parcels that increase connectivity. They should, that's what that's what the Trails Committee should be doing, is looking for connections between all the trails that are available.
and I think what the person might be seeing as well, that's what the other half of our committee, like, we're kind of working on that now anyway, so it's fine, so I was just thinking if there's any of this that we can,
And again, it's one person's opinion who voted positively.
Hmm.
So that's what, like, I don't wanna start taking things out, maybe refining them, but.
yeah, in some cases, we may want to describe them a little bit differently for clarity. Like, for example, 62D, prioritize land acquisitions to purchase parcels that increase connectivity. You might reword that to say something along the lines of the Trails Committee will identify opportunities for land acquisition
Very good.
to increase connectivity.
why don't we add in the last one, so somewhere in that little paragraph. To work with the relevant town and regional organizations to develop a map of existing trails and
Yeah.
proposed routes and destinations, that's one that wasn't struck by conservation, I think that.
Yeah, that's something that, no, I
Be
mean,
great.
6-3.
I mean, to some extent,
63B was,
That's the one.
conservation did flagged by Conservation Department.
Oh,
43B, 43B, and 63B.
They had issue with the map?
Yeah,
yeah, conservation, I know, has been doing some trails mapping work.
as has land trust with the trail.
Well, true, but like,
Right.
Whereas,
Why can't we just put the word?
Yeah, let's put it in.
Yeah,
I
I think we should put that in.
Consult with the.
Yeah, consult,
conservation.
yeah, okay, so instead of work, consult with relevant town and regional organizations to
Okay.
develop a map of existing trails and proposed routes and
Let's
destinations.
just change the verb on this, because inventorying and mapping, again, we should be consulted, trails, they should have a voice
Mhm.
as a committee.
But they can, so then what will happen? So we'll come up with this charge, hopefully it will be approved, we can hopefully get this going. And then the Trails Committee is also gonna look at this, right? And in so doing, they will see these items that were identified as something that
Mhm.
Trails Committee might wanna look at.
So, yeah, kind of. These action items that we listed in the Trails Committee charge. Come straight from the action plan, of course.
Right.
And those action items, I think. We may ask the Trails Committee to report. On progress with those action items from their perspective.
Right,
So I think that's kind of the way, I think these are the ones that we ended up
right,
at least tentatively assigning to the Trails Committee.
right.
Um,
So that's the
Understanding
thing,
that it was the Trails Committee would be not doing all of this itself, but they would be sort of responsible for
Coordinating.
reporting on it,
Yeah.
coordinating it.
yeah, so
that
ultimately,
works. I mean, we've got we have a reporting mechanism in place, but the reporting structure, and it's getting close to the end of the year. It's time almost time to send out our annual questionnaire to each one of the responsible
Yeah.
organizations. What have you done this year on these action
right,
items?
which might be timely because they might say, oh dear, we've done nothing. Can the Trails Committee do it?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But again,
But
so
that's-
the Trails Committee will have access to this, right? And so they can see, oh yeah, maybe we can help with improving signage or, whatever. There's a lot of items in here. I was trying to count them as we were talking that Trails Committee is
Yeah,
mentioning. So,
and I don't remember off the top of my head how many, but yes, I think the Trails Committee was listed as. We set that list up with a responsible agency. This is the agency that's gonna answer for this. And then we also set it up with, for each one of those, the supporting agencies. So the Trails Committee would be listed as supporting agency. and a
supporting,
number of
right,
them.
right. We did a lot of work on this. How has this come up now? It's like,
Mhm,
weren't you paying attention
mhm.
when we pushed this back out to all of you? Review this.
16 items I mentioned in the Trails Committee out of this, the plan, which actually I think, I'm not sure what Mr. Jefferson, if this is what he was referring to, but when he stated about something about the master plan.
Yeah.
That wasn't what I was referring to when I spoke. I was speaking to the open space and rec
Mhm.
master plan. So I forget what was.
I think I can read all the minutes all the time.
Master plan survey results, when I get.
No.
Mhm.
I bet you.
What a
do.
proof point.
I've known you for 20 years, apparently.
So it just, there was something here about master plan that was brought up and when I did refer to it in our select board meeting, but I specifically was stating that open space and rec master plan. And that's what we were referring to, but anyways, just for clarification. Okay, so read what you have. No pressure.
No, no worries.
Yeah, we wanna get this done, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, yeah,
The mission of the Trails Committee is to serve as is to function as a liaison, working in partnership with the Concom Land Trust Planning Board and Recreation Commission. Period. We're omitting all those action items. Additionally, committee shall explore ideas for interconnecting Grafton's open spaces by working with land trust and town boards and departments on new trail development, period. Taking out all the negotiations. And then we also wanted to add the the committee shall engage the public and provide information on trails in Grafton. And then we didn't finish deciding whether or not we wanted to say consult with relevant town on a map, 6.3B if we wanted to. Or just leave it out,
I think consult is better.
Yeah, consult is better.
yeah,
consult
If-
relevant
if
town,
you-
okay,
You have to know what's out there.
yeah,
If.
Yeah,
if
that's
we're
what they're
separate
probably gonna
maps,
start with, yeah.
Coordinate.
It's
Yeah.
the beginning.
so I can just type that up
That sounds great.
and,
As long as we don't add anything crazy in there, we can. And I would encourage you all to come, people who are supportive, trying to
Yeah,
push us forward to the.
I'm excited that people applied and.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that tells you that there's something here
Mhm.
that the town needs to pay
Well, there's
attention to.
16 items.
Yeah.
There's 16 action items.
Right.
They already have a lot to do.
right,
So
Get
really,
started.
the problem we're solving here is how to describe the Trails Committee
Yeah.
in a way that doesn't ruffle any feathers.
correct.
Mhm.
And additionally, just as a point, the 6 folks that put their names in were also people that aren't on other committees so far, you know, like we would think, oh, we'd be interested in
Yeah,
this,
right,
right?
right.
So, I think that was exciting as well.
And I would also say, just to be clear and on the record, that the land trust, when I talked to them, was definitely in favor of the Trails Committee. So,
That's interesting. It's positive that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
would be interested. It's positive they're interested in it because they may see a lack of coordination.
Yeah,
right, yeah,
Right, so,
but their feathers aren't ruffled by the creation of a Trails
right, so,
Committee, yeah.
so the land trust sees this proposed Trails Committee as complementary
Mhm.
to the work they're doing on trails.
That's exactly the right word there, Dick.
Yeah,
It's like,
complimentary, yeah.
yes,
I like
this
that,
committee is the Trails Committee can be complementary to all the things that are going on.
Yeah, and our view of that is that it should also be understood as being complementary
Mhm.
to what the conservation does with trails.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
fit that word in
Yeah,
there.
we're not trying to take anything away from anybody.
All right, great. Well, I'm glad everyone was.
Oh, very good. Wow.
So, great.
Why couldn't we do that a couple months ago?
I don't, it's sometimes
Take a
takes,
hash through it.
takes a couple
Yeah.
go around.
Well, we were told to come back with
Yeah,
a more
right.
substantive.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the
charge,
things
you know?
that was suggested after the first go around was that we itemize
Yeah.
the relationship of this committee to the open space and rec plan.
Mhm.
And when we did that,
Yeah.
and some people read that in a way that we didn't intend.
Correct, yeah. Okay, great. I'm
So,
glad that we're all.
That's good.
yeah, and, we're not trying to, right now, here and now, we're not trying to do any more work than we have to.
Mm.
Yeah, we're just coming up with yet a better way to explain
Mhm.
what the role of this committee is intended to be.
And I'll just, not to beat a horse, but I'll add that when that came up at the meeting, that perhaps it can come back to this committee, I did let the board know that this committee's role was really just overseeing this and making sure folks are following it, not to take on, you
The
know,
actual work.
yeah.
All the work, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what, we did not want this committee to take on a whole bunch of work.
Yeah.
I think that the reason we formed this committee was to oversee the implementation
right,
of the OSRP action plan, but not to do the implementation work ourselves.
okay, great.
So we tried, as much as possible, we identified existing boards and committees
Mhm,
that are responsible for doing all the actual work.
mhm. Okay,
So it sounds like we're all set on that.
great. Thanks, Shannon, for writing it up.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
And you're gonna
I will
Certificate
send it
first.
to.
send it out,
this
we'll
group.
agree, and then.
yeah, just
okay.
verify that it,
This is the
accurately reflects what we
verbiage
What we discussed, yeah.
and if it, like I
That,
said
that's,
before,
that's your return email is, right, when you say, this does accurately reflect, yeah.
Mhm.
if any of us, after reading that, thinks that we really do need to work on it some more as a committee, we'll do that at our next meeting.
Mhm. And I'm, for just, the only reason for me to want to get this written up tonight is it's not that we haven't been talking about this, right? We
Yeah.
all know what the intent is, so it's not like we're reinventing this whole thing, right? We have a select board meeting next week, but then I was thinking maybe I could ask Matt to put on for the 7th. That would be our next one, November 7th. And if it's able to get to that, I'll let you guys know.
Yeah, and our next meeting would normally be scheduled for November 15th,
Yeah,
third Wednesday.
write that in right now. Okay, so the parcel, I didn't read through this today, sorry.
So onwards then,
Mhm.
we're all set with the Trails Committee.
Yep.
Excellent. So the other major agenda item is the parcel acquisition project, which we've been asked to just review the documents that came out of our August meeting. Which I think there's probably not a whole lot. So there is
In the meeting minutes from August.
yeah, yes, we definitely, that's the last item on the agenda.
No, I'm just pulling it up.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right, okay, so the
What's
August
one-
meeting minutes.
1335 Old Upton Road.
Yeah, it should be 135.
Oh, okay,
That's the Robinson property.
gotcha.
When they typed it up, they just put an extra 3 in there.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't think we have any roads that have a 4-digit number, right?
No, we don't.
It's coming though.
Yeah, I hope not.
Stay tuned.
We don't want that to happen
No, we don't.
for the open space.
We don't have long enough roads for any of the numbers that high. If our roads were configured differently, we might. But the way our roads are configured.
Yeah,
It's just not gonna happen.
everybody owns their own road.
Yeah, so that was the only thing I noticed in this, well. So this document had the priority draft list, there was that, and then they did have one question they wanted us to answer. Where they said the biomap data
Hmm.
does not include all wetland data, which is found in the Mass DEP wetlands data layer in GIS. So they've added that in. Over in the spreadsheet, item 6, where we talked about property covered by the biomap core. Biomap CNL, I don't remember what that is, or Mass DEP wetlands. So if we're comfortable including the wetlands in this. Along these other things as areas to be considered for environmental protection potential. That's their big question for us. Do we want, or would we rather separate wetlands for any reason?
I think it just included.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of a reason to,
Yeah, okay. I was thinking, is this a trick question?
right.
Complete picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could articulate what it might be, but I can sort of abstractly imagine that one might want to consider. What, in terms of prioritization of land acquisition,
Hmm.
one might want to consider the presence or absence of wetlands as a factor different. To be evaluated and scored differently than
Right,
information that's on the biomap.
yeah. I think.
But I don't see any reason to distinguish
Yeah.
between those.
Okay. Data layers, that's
And
part of
that-
my,
That, I think, was the only things I saw on that draft list, priority draft list that needed to be
And the.
answered or corrected.
okay,
Um,
yeah, it's really exciting that they're hopping in, and we've been
Yeah.
talking about this, so, yeah.
Yeah. And then the workbook. The criteria list document,
Yeah.
they basically itemized, and I think this largely is an attempt to reflect what we discussed in August. In terms of, the different ranking criteria. Like the development potential in 25% increments, the proximity within a quarter mile or abutting or multiple, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And when I looked through those, I didn't see anything that struck me as being different from what we had discussed in August. Or anything that I would now propose to change.
There's a couple of them that I would take out, but. I don't wanna cause more work for them or for anybody, it's just, I don't think that. Because this is such a high level like screening of parcels, I don't think that we should get into details about like. Is there a structure present, is there parking? This is just like a general screening to identify
Mm.
the best parcels.
It's a scoring though, right? Like it all contributes to the score?
Yeah, but I feel like what if, say
So,
there's some parcels that, are great potential for open space or recreation, but then they get like a lower score because they don't have parking or they're not next to an easement. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, taking the structures, that's probably a good example of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Does it make a difference if we're
Right.
prioritizing blind acquisition? Does it make a difference to the priority if there is or is not a structure on it?
For me, it does not. You know, it doesn't make a difference if there's a structure.
But, right,
You need
but
to,
there's kind of no harm in having the information. Except, I mean, it's like Elizabeth said, if it affects the score negatively, then maybe, but
well,
we would see that as we were going
Okay,
through it.
all right.
Yeah, I think
Sorry, I just had to
No.
say, it. Like, out of cramp.
one element of this is the weight that you give to the criteria.
Yeah, right.
So
Okay,
for example, the presence or absence of a structure, you might give that minimal weight. I mean,
Okay.
it's interesting to know,
yeah,
the existence of a structure might, in some cases, necessitate spending money to remove the structure.
Right.
So that, off the top of my head, that's the only example I can think of where it might make a difference as to whether there's a structure. I suppose if you were looking at something fairly specific as a potential use, where having a structure would be an advantage,
Right,
then there again, but so you would give the structure, structure status would be carry a very low weight.
can you, instead of ranking it, you just put a greater weight on, the need for awareness? We need to be aware that this property has something on it because it
Yeah.
might turn into something we need to remove, but don't exclude it because of that.
Right, in other words, the structure or lack thereof should not influence the priority.
No,
right.
yeah. That's a good point, though.
That's a good way
At
to
least we
put
can
it.
make that as a point. It's actually, I don't know that this could ever happen, but if, if there's an awesome barn on this
right, yeah.
beautiful
Right.
piece of property, that could be a positive. I don't know that we have.
Insurance and an insurance risk. So, I mean, you could just, depending on where you're going, you could think about anything that
True,
could affect.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right, I think, that's sort of a case by case thing.
Right, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
that's the important, not really weighting it as much
Well,
as
yeah.
you.
Maybe we can bring that up to them though, and to your point, Shannon, like also public parking. If you're just looking at acquiring open space for greater good, you might
Right.
not worry so much if we can park and access it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
maybe that also would be something that would be a little bit,
Right, parking or lack thereof, the value of that depends very much on the anticipated use.
right,
But this is just
Exactly.
trying to develop the criteria, then they'll talk about the scoring, so we don't even know if it's a low
No,
or
right,
high
right, right.
score.
true,
So this is just, all they're doing is saying like, what are some of the variables that would be considered, so,
Okay.
I mean,
So the next step, we maybe want to
Okay.
say, well, let's put this
Oh,
lower or
right.
higher.
Okay.
yeah, I
okay.
think the scoring piece will be our next, because
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
say like, if you get like residential development potential, well, are we scoring that as a low or a high, like?
Right.
So, it says the actual scoring values or ranks will be determined at a future meeting. So we can go through this, some of them, they just have ease. Well, they said east of access, but I think they mean ease
Ease of
of
access.
access.
Well, mine says ease,
Mine does too.
Mine says east.
for A, B, and C.
I have 4 east. I may be I'm looking at a draft document, so.
Anyway, yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
though, like, once we. look
Yeah,
at
and then the
scoring.
uniqueness, like how are they, what are the differentiating circumstances, so.
So what are we supposed to be doing right now with that Excel worksheet? Are we just reviewing it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I see it now.
If I understand it correctly, no guarantee that I understand everything correctly, but if I understand correctly what they're looking for at this point is, are we in agreement with the various different criteria they've listed here and the different ranking categories?
Yeah, I mean, I think they got the things that we spoke
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
during the meeting, so
Right.
as we go forward from here, we'll probably,
But then like what happens next? Now we give it back to them, say good, and then what do they do?
Presumably,
I don't think that we know for sure.
at some point, and I'm not quite sure when this happens, but they're basically gonna use all these criteria. And they're gonna match that up with various GIS data and, basically come up with, all these different things.
Right, they're gonna come up with the layers in the database of the parcels.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how are they going to do that if there's no scoring in there yet? Like at
Well,
what
probably
point
not
is the
there yet.
scoring gonna
Well,
happen?
Did they ask for our input on this?
Didn't they want us to come up with a scoring so they can apply?
I was just gonna say, if they ask for our input as part of this, maybe when you respond back, just say, we're gonna be involved in the ranking and or would they be coming back in, right, to talk to us about how?
Right, that's what I'm asking is like, is
Yeah.
that what we're supposed to be doing right now, or that's farther down? Cause that's, otherwise it's gonna keep getting bumped and bumped and bumped, and then drag out a couple more months, I don't know.
Was there like a cover letter or something? Like, we didn't see anything other than, it doesn't say on here.
Let's see, I'm just trying to find.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, at least we know that for right now, we think that they captured what we discussed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And the
It
question
just
is
says
just,
Matt will further refine the
Right.
criteria based on comments and suggestions, and scoring and weighting factors will be discussed at a future meeting
yeah.
to move the project forward.
okay,
That was
I
the
guess the
August.
sense of the,
Yeah,
our group is that,
September, we didn't meet.
no,
yeah, so I think, aside from those two, the 1335 and the wetlands question, for which we have answers,
Mhm.
we're basically okay with our understanding of where this is at right now.
Mhm.
That, sort of the next steps are gonna involve,
Maybe just stating to them if the next steps involve, sorry, to interrupt, but the rank, more
Yeah.
ranking, that we would like to have some input, or we have some ideas on that, I guess.
yeah, so we'll, we would be happy to discuss,
Yeah.
criteria, weight and ranking.
Mhm.
and Figure out how that's all gonna work.
Yeah.
could they provide us with some data? I love data. They provide us with some data. We could look at that and assess for ourselves take a parcel, for example, and let's see, we really want this.
Yeah.
And based on the criteria that's being presented, how do we find like properties
Uh-huh.
to what we really like? And see,
And I think maybe once we've agreed that these look good for now as they are, then maybe they can start working on developing the data.
yeah, that, okay,
I
good.
don't think they were gonna work on the data
Yeah.
until they knew that, that we're comfortable with this as it's,
Yeah.
as it currently stands.
Okay, good.
But
We're interested in getting involved in the next phase being, the ranking, yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll see what
Trying to
the
remember
is.
what all we said, what they were said back in August, but I think, yeah, they'll develop, they'll begin. Once we've got this nailed down, which we now do,
Yeah,
we'll begin working on the data and then,
well, you're gonna respond to them, is that? Or like
Yeah,
say,
I will.
this looks good,
if Fiona had asked me
Okay.
actually, you should ask for anybody who had any comments on this to,
okay,
feed that back to her, but since,
And see,
we're pretty
they
much where
have
we are now,
data
I'll
sources.
just,
It looks like they still are looking for data sources,
Yeah,
so,
right.
whatever that could be.
yeah, so once we start looking at the actual data, presumably, they're gonna take this and they're gonna, extract the relevant data from the various GIS data layers and begin to crunch that.
Right.
And it may, to the extent that I can remember having done somewhat similar exercises in the past, probably the first pass at producing data will reveal to us some things that, well, we didn't quite think of that.
sure, of course, yeah,
So there's certainly room for flexibility and refinement, but you gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So maybe when you respond to Fiona, then just let her know that, yep, we
Yeah.
looked at this, looks good, there's two things, and then additionally, we have some you know, we'd love to have some input on the ranking, or at least if they come up with the ranking, then can we look at it and see what we think, right?
Yeah, I'm quite certain that that they would intend for us to be
Yeah,
involved in
right.
the evaluation of the data once the data starts getting assembled.
Okay.
I would hope so. I don't wanna sit back and wait for them to come up with something and say, well, here it is, we're all done.
Yes, we wanna collaborate. What are the words that we're using? We want to, we're consulting.
Coordinating and collaborating.
Okay, great.
Yeah, consulting is too strong a word. It really is. Collaborating.
Well,
In
great.
some context, consulting is kind of
It's
not a very
expensive.
good word.
Consulting is expensive.
I think it's great because there's, you know, there's folks in town where I think folks feel like hear a lot about development and housing and et cetera. And so the fact that we're finally also looking at, you know, open space, whether or not we end up acquiring anything or not, you know, who knows, but it's gotta be a balance, right? So I think that this is great that we're moving forward and balancing things.
Definitely.
Okay,
So
What's that?
we are good to go with that for the moment.
right,
We're
minutes.
anxiously waiting to see some real results here, some data that we can.
Yeah, some data, that's right.
That's kind of one of the things.
Just let us into it.
Working,
See what we do.
we've been working towards for a while, and we're now getting into it,
Mhm.
but glad. So with that, the last item on the agenda is the previous meeting minutes, about which I have only one comment. The minutes for the September 20th meeting that didn't happen was we actually attempted that on September 27th.
Oh, was it? Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, so with that change, I move that we accept the minutes with the one change from August and September 2023.
Second.
Moving to second, the minutes be approved. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Clear that motion
Nay.
carried unanimously.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
Second, yep.
Moved and second that we be adjourned, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
That.
Very
Carried
efficient.
unanimously.
Very efficient meeting.